Welcome on in, Eagles fans, to a reaction episode of the No-Huddle Show. I'm Joe Giglio alongside Eliot, Shorr-Parks, Matt Lombardo. They were out at the LA Coliseum on Sunday to watch the Eagles, capture the NFC East with a thrilling victory over the Rams, but also watch Carson Wentz go down, what we now know is a torn ACL, ending his season. This is going to be a different reaction. So some of the reaction we got on Twitter and the email, it's kind of somber, but at the same time, what a positive spin from the fan base. But there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, the Eagles have been the best team in the NFL, Eliot, I think, since the beginning of the season. And now they have to try to continue this march, which they're still in a good position to do something special here, but continue without the guy that was probably the likely MVP of the NFL. Eliot, it's been a couple days when you guys did a podcast from the Coliseum. Obviously, the news is official now. Carson Wentz out for the season, and we're not even sure when we'll ever see him again with his torn ACL and the timeline here. But just your thoughts today as the Eagles kind of try to settle back in without Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been more excited to record a podcast than this one, just because when we did the post-game pod, me and Matt from the Rams Stadium, it was all just extremely new at that point. We didn't really know any detail at all. We didn't know that Wentz had officially torn his ACL. We didn't really have a chance to completely process everything. So I feel like this is going to be all of our first real chance to really talk about this. And I've been thinking about it the last few days, and it's been interesting to listen to the reaction, listen to a lot of radio, listening to what the fans have been saying, reading everything, reading what fans have to say on Twitter. And I think, we're obviously going to talk about this at length, but I think all I can come up with to summarize everything when it comes to like Wentz's injury, Foles at quarterback this season, next season, is this is just really bad. There's just really no other way to put it. This Wentz injury is just really bad on basically every level. And we can sugarcoat things. We can talk about Foles' strengths. We can talk about this, that, and the third. This is really bad. And I think Eagles fans just need to accept that. And that's not saying that they shouldn't root for the team or that they should give up on the season or anything like that. Wentz will play again. But you can't, I've heard people saying, we can still do this with Foles. And yeah, maybe you can, but I think to even suggest that this team's chance at a Super Bowl or this team's chance in the postseason is anywhere as close with Foles as opposed to Wentz is just basically discrediting what we've seen from Wentz over the past 12 games. So that would just basically be where I would want to start on where 2 days to think about has left me. It's just really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, and Matt, I want to get your reaction, the same thing, just kind of where you're at right now. I'm on that end of this. Look, the Eagles are a great team. I don't think it's just one guy, but this is the most important guy, and I think Wentz has been the biggest reason they've been able to overcome all the other issues they've had. Wentz and Peterson, that combination, I think, is the strength of the Eagles, and they lose half of that now. And the bummer of this for this team is I really believe they're the best team in the NFL, and now they lose this player. And I think the idea of them winning the Super Bowl this year is done. Can they win a playoff game? Sure. I mean, they're probably going to have home field. I'm out on the idea that this team can actually win the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. If they prove me wrong, well, Doug Peterson's going to be the coach of the world, because that would be a great job. But, Matt, where are you at right now, a couple days after the news is now settled and Carson Wentz done for the year?
Yeah, first of all, I think you can make a pretty solid case of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have a chance to clinch home field throughout the AFC on Sunday. I think the Steelers are actually the quote-unquote best team in the NFL and might have been for a big chunk of the season. But let's just take a step back. And, Eliot, you talked about this at the Coliseum on Sunday night. And the more that I digest what happened, the more that you hear expert opinions on what happened, the more that Dr. James Andrews and the report that we wrote about last night from Chris Mortensen saying that this is a 9 to 12-month timeline, I actually think that there are bigger picture ramifications that loom much larger for next year and beyond for Carson Wentz and the Eagles than there are for this year. Guys, I did radio yesterday as soon as I touched down in Philadelphia and D.C. I did radio in North Dakota. And the one thing that when you kind of, take a broad stroke look at the NFL, there are a lot of teams going through this exact situation where their starting quarterback gets hurt. You look at Brett Hundley limping along with the Packers in the absence of Aaron Rodgers. You look at what happened with Tom Savage, and before that, Matt McGloin in Houston with Deshaun Watson going down. The Eagles are better positioned than any of those teams with Nick Foles. And for this year, just for this year in this playoff run, I think the Eagles are still an odds-on favorite to go to the NFC Championship game. I don't know that they beat a Los Angeles Rams team with Jared Goff in Philadelphia with Nick Foles. I don't think that they beat a Russell Wilson-led Seattle Seahawks team in Philadelphia to go to a Super Bowl. Can they beat a team like Minnesota? Who knows? But there's another case where you have Teddy Bridgewater go down a year ago, Sam Bradford go down this year, Case Keenum steps in. And what I'm trying to say here is that the Eagles are a complete team in a lot of ways, that when you get into postseason play, I think having a marquee quarterback makes all the difference. But I don't think that the marquee quarterback in today's NFL makes or breaks your chances if you're a team that's built as deep and as talented almost across the board as the Eagles are. So I think they're still the odds-on favorite to go to the NFC title game. I wouldn't rule them out from going to a Super Bowl, but obviously the confidence level in those things happening, that changes without Carson Wentz. Because, Eliot, you said it, he was the guy who was the magician in the pocket. He's the guy who converted all those 3rd and 10s and touchdown passes on 3rd and long. You're going to have to change. You're not going to be able to run the same run-pass options. You're not going to be able to rely on the quarterback to carry you. Nick Foles is a cog in the machine, but this is a pretty dynamic machine that Howie Roseman has built over the course of the offseason.
So here's where I disagree with you. I think people are discrediting, and I'm not saying you are, but I think people don't realize how much Wentz does for every aspect of this team.
I agree. I mean, you win time of possession battles. You hold on to the ball.
So,
you're the number one scoring offense in the league at 31.1 points per game. But my thought is, let's say that dips down to 24 points per game, and your defense goes from giving up 17 points a game to 20 points a game. You're still ranking in the upper echelon of both categories. And again, I'm not saying that they're a lock to go to the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. I'm just not ready to jump off any bridges at this point for this particular season. Big picture, long term, next year, a completely different dynamic. But I think you can gut it out and survive 5 games to get to the Super Bowl with Nick Foles.
But I guess what I'm saying is that, yeah, you can make the argument because of where the Eagles are at. Like they already have a playoff spot locked up. I mean, they could win one of the next 2. And I think they're going to do well in the next 3 games. But you could make the argument that even if they won one of the next 2, they probably would still get a bye. And in fact, I think they do get a bye if they win one more game. But I guess what I'm saying is that at this point, the Eagles are a anything can happen team, as opposed to a legitimately good team that can actually beat teams because they're a quality opponent. I mean, yeah, the Eagles could beat the Saints. They could beat these teams, but anything can happen in the NFL. But if you just look at the X's and O's now of this team, they're not anywhere near the quality of a team they were with Wentz. And that's just the harsh reality. I mean, the defense, we'll see how they are when, the Eagles defense played with a lot of leads this year. They played where they didn't get put in a lot of bad positions because of turnovers. And as you mentioned, the time of possession was huge.
Sunday, though, they got put in a bad position, falling behind early. It started to snowball. They were behind late, and they came up and they won the game against probably the best all-around opponent on the road who they've played all year. So I think that they
the
checked
defense
that
still
box.
Gave up how many points on Sunday? I mean, I know there was a special team, so they gave up like 28 or something like that.
Something close to that 30, something close to that 28.
Yeah, but my point is that when they needed to make a play, Chris Long got the strip fumble. When they needed to put the game
Jared
on
Goff,
ice.
And again, I don't want to get into a Jared Goff debate. But, I mean, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, these are quarterbacks that are a level above Jared Goff.
Well, here's the thing. They're going to have the worst quarterback in the NFC playoffs, no matter how we spin this. I mean, no matter – that's it.
They might have the worst quarterback in the NFL playoffs. I don't know who the bottom – yeah.
Probably, yeah. I mean, whatever. There's some guys in the AFC in the bottom that are kind of inconsistent. But the NFC, they're going to have the worst quarterback. And the reason it just stinks is, look, if this happened in September, it would be awful. It'd be awful anytime it happens because of what Carson Wentz
Wentz
means.
Well, it might be better because it would help your draft stock.
Well, yeah. But the expectation wasn't Super Bowl this year. And then all of a sudden, as this year, became what it became that. And now that's just so hard for me to believe that they can win 3 of those games. Can they beat any one of those teams you mentioned, Matt? I think they can. In any one day at the Link, I think they could with Nick Foles. But can they beat 3 to hoist the Lombardi Trophy, including probably Ben Roethlisberger or Tom Brady in the Super Bowl? I just don't believe that. That's what we believe. But now the team, Eliot, has to go out there and try to convince themselves they can. And you guys were at the press conference yesterday with Doug Peterson, and I'm just fascinated to see how this team now goes about their business the rest of the year, because they can say it and they could believe it, but it's another thing to go out there and actually feel it when they take the field. So, Eliot, you said a couple minutes ago you think they're going to play well here, at least in the immediate after the absence of Wentz?
Yeah, but I think that has a lot to do with who they're playing. I mean, the Giants, you almost couldn't craft a better schedule for these next 3 games if you tried. At MetLife, I guess you'd prefer to have that game at home, and it is the third straight road game, so I do think there is some difficulties there. But I actually think having Foles in the lineup might re-energize his team a little bit just for the initial game, because I think they'll be so amped to kind of prove everything, and I think that helps guard against a bit of a letdown. And let's be honest, Nick Foles is bad. Eli Manning is might be worse at this point. That Giants offense is terrible. So, that's a winnable game. You get the Raiders at home in prime time. I think that's a winnable game. The Dallas game, who knows what that is going to be, but I think if the Eagles, for whatever reason, need that game, I think that's a winnable game. So I do think the Eagles can go 3-0. But again, as you kind of said, Joe, yeah, maybe they win one playoff game. And maybe just because of the pure circumstances that Carson Wentz put this team in, they can pull that off. But we're reaching the point of saying, well, anything can happen. You can't look at the Eagles team, in my opinion, and say they are even. In the playoffs, you need an elite quarterback. That just is what it is. Or you need an elite defense. And the Eagles don't have an elite defense. The skill position players, I've said all season, I thought were average, and I think Wentz made them look better. And then a dynamic of this that we haven't discussed is Alshon Jeffrey has been coming on really strong as of late because he's had a lot more reps with Wentz. 6 touchdowns in the last 6 games, I believe. I would bet that unless they're throwing around today, that you could probably count the amount of passes that Alshon has caught from Foles on your hands, and maybe even on one of your hands, because Alshon didn't partake in a lot of training camp. Foles didn't partake in a lot of training camp. I'd imagine during the week, Foles gets very limited reps with the first team offense, and Jeffrey, has been limited with some of these weeks in practices. So another dynamic of this is that Foles, when you look at these skill position players, Aguilar had really good chemistry with Wentz. That's off the table. Alshon was getting good chemistry with Wentz. That's off the table. Torrey Smith hasn't even played with Foles. Zach Ertz, yes, he is going to be there, and him and Foles do have a good dynamic. But that's one of these things we're not talking about is now what do you get from Alshon? Because we saw these first 5-6 weeks and in preseason and training camp, if Alshon doesn't have a good rapport with a guy, he's not going to be a guy that produces. And so I think that's a major concern. And one more thing I'll say, too, when you're talking about the offense is, the running game is very good, but the running game benefits from having Wentz under center in 2 ways. One, because other teams respect Wentz, and so they play the entire Eagles offense differently. But 2, Wentz pre-snap is very good at looking at what the Eagles are facing defensively and getting them into a good position to run the ball. So now if I'm an opposing defense, I'm saying, okay, the Eagles are really good at running the ball. I'm going to stack the box. I'm going to make Nick Foles beat me, and I'm going to make the average set of receivers that this team has now that Carson Wentz is gone beat me, and I'll be very interested to see if the Eagles can still run the ball with Foles under center.
All right, let's keep the conversation, Matt, going about Foles and this team, and then we'll circle back to Wentz and his future and what you guys are hearing.
Before we do that, let's not forget that the Eagles have the number 1 defense in the NFL, number 1 defense in terms of giveaway, takeaway in the NFC. So, again, I don't think they go to and win to the Super Bowl, but I don't think that this is a team that is going to be a 1-and-out in the playoffs simply because of Nick Foles. Yes, he probably is the worst quarterback in the NFC playoffs when they get there, but to dismiss what this defense has done, particularly in terms of giveaway, takeaway, and total defense and scoring. They give up less than 20 points per game up until Sunday when they were on the road against the Rams. I don't think it's fair to dismiss what this defense has done, and I think that that's the reason why you give them a chance in any playoff game moving forward.
But I would make the argument that any playoff team has a chance in any playoff game. I understand what the point you're making, but
well, no, I'm just saying to dismiss that they don't have an elite defense when they're the number 1 defense in the NFL and the number 1 in the NFC in giveaway, takeaway. I just think that that's just kind of looking at it a broad stroke, that if Carson Wentz is gone, the entire house of cards is going to fall apart. And I don't see that. They might lose because they're trailing, by 7 points to the Seahawks or to the Rams or to the Saints, and Drew Brees is under center and Drew Brees drives down and, takes care of business, or Nick Foles can't come back. But I don't think they're going to lose because the defense can't hold up. That's the point I'm making.
Well, they did just – okay, we'll see. We'll see. They did just give up 30-something points to the Rams. Right, but they're 28-something, sorry.
Right. But they also had a timely strip fumble and a defensive score at the end of the game when the Rams had a chance to go down and win it, right? The Rams, they got the ball back with plenty of time to go down and win that football game.
Well, they got it with 1 second. The score came with 1 second left on the clock, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right, but before that, you had the strip fumble when they had time to go down and take the lead.
The Chris Long
Right.
play, you mean?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no,
which
I
was a
know, but
great
I guess
play.
the point I'm making is we've said all along that the test for this defense will be facing elite quarterback play in the playoffs, and Jared Goff is better than I thought, and the Rams team looks good, but he's if Foles is the worst quarterback in the NFC playoffs, depending on who makes it, you can make the argument Goff's the second worst. I mean, you really.
Well,
I mean,
here's the hard part for
Case
the
Keenum.
Eagles.
I forgot about Case Keenum. Right. All right.
Well, here's the hard part for the Eagles is the other guy you might be wary of in terms of, I don't know if he's that good in the NFC playoffs. He's got to have the other bye most likely. So, like, whoever comes into Philadelphia for the divisional round game, if we're assuming the Eagles will have that game in Philadelphia and they win one of these 2 or 3 coming up, it's going to be a good quarterback. It's Cam Newton, it's Matt Ryan, it's Russell Wilson, it's Aaron Rodgers, or Jared Goff. Like, they're going to face a good quarterback in that first round. All right, let's get to some of the reaction here. Email here from Dennis. Matt, we'll throw this one at you. Foles came into the Rams game, and 5 of the first 6 plays were passing plays. Yes, Doug trusts him. Yes, he is ready. Look at his press conference after the game. You see a mature man ready to do a man's job. Let's talk about Foles' aspect of this right now. But no, besides his talent level, just the readiness and Matt, when you look at the offense with Foles, and you kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, like Doug was asked yesterday when you guys were there if he has to change the offense. He downplayed that. Obviously, he has to change some aspects of this offense. How do you think this thing will look with Nick under center compared to Carson?
Yeah, I wrote about this morning, Joe, and I think that the 2 things that really have to change are, we already talked about it a little bit, you're not going to be able to have the run-pass option because teams don't respect the ability of Nick Foles to tuck and run for the first down. It just doesn't have Wentz's mobility, so you're going to see a lot more play-action passes, and you're going to have to run the ball to set up the pass in a similar way to the way that the Rams used Todd Gurley. And I think that when you have a 3-headed monster like Ajayi, Blunt, and Clement, you can kind of craft an offense around your running game. And number 2, I think you're going to have to keep Brent Selleck in as a blocking tight end, because when you look at Halapoulivaati Vaitai against Frank Turner of the Seahawks and against Robert Quinn against the Rams, it's no coincidence that against the 2 top pass rushers he's lined up against, he's struggled, and he's given up 3 sacks and 5 pressures in 2 games. That's not going to be good enough come playoff time. That's not going to be good enough against the Raiders. It might not be good enough against Olivier Vernon and Jason Pierre-Paul this Sunday. So those are the 2 changes I think you make. But I agree. I think Nick Foles is ready, and I think that the fact that Howie Roseman went out and bought a $4 million insurance policy on Carson Wentz. I've been doing the quarterback power rankings all year. Joe, you stepped in last week, and it gives you a really deeper appreciation for what quarterback play in the NFL looks like this year. There are probably 10, 11, maybe 12 quarterbacks that you can say you can build a team, you can build a franchise around. And then there's Drek. There's either rookies who shouldn't be in there, there's journeymen, there's young players who haven't accomplished anything, there's stopgap players. And I think that the Eagles are so well positioned with Nick Foles, a guy that has playoff experience, threw for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns in a playoff game, was 27-2 the last time he was here, has started games in the NFL. I think that they're going to be okay at quarterback. My bigger concern, ironically, is what happens with the left side of that offensive line.
Can I ask one question, though? So you just talked about how bad the quarterback play is, and I agree. The quarterback play in the NFL is not good. I agree there's probably 12 or 11 guys, that you could trust, and then there's Drek. Foles was not given one of the 32 starting jobs in the NFL. It's not like he had a chance to start somewhere else and said no and came to the Eagles. I mean, there was 31 other teams. There are 32 teams, including the Eagles, that didn't believe he was a starter.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying as a backup. I'm not saying that Nick Foles is a top 15 quarterback in the league. I'm saying that as a backup, you could do a lot worse. I mean, you have Tom Savage in Houston. Right. Brent Hundley, even though he sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 years, is nowhere near ready. He had 1 decent game. DeShone Kizer is a rookie. Jacoby Brissett has been average to below average most of the year. I'm just saying that as a backup quarterback and solidifying that position with a guy with starting experience was prudent on Howie Roseman's part, and I think it's going to pay dividends down the stretch.
All right, Eliot, I want to ask you this. Throw this to you. I want to see, because someone emailed us here about Wentz being ready, like right now, ready for what he's being tasked with right now, not just so much ready to play, but ready to jump into the fire here. Let me throw this stat at you, and do you think Nick is different because of his familiarity with the Eagles, Doug, and the whole thing? So Nick Foles is going to be he's going to lead the Eagles into the playoffs with 3 or less starts. Since 1991, which is when they went to this playoff format, I believe, right around there, 13 quarterbacks have done this. So, basically the starter goes out very late in the season, 3 or less games to go, and they have to take the reins into the playoffs. The combined playoff record of those quarterbacks is 2-12. So like we could come up with scenarios like Case Keenum, Tom Brady back in the day. I heard yesterday on the air in Philadelphia, they were talking a little bit about backup quarterbacks that have gone to the Super Bowl. Jeff Hostetler.
Dilfer.
But the idea, Dilfer, right? But right, he took over for Tony Banks in '99. The idea of a quarterback coming in, Eliot, this late in the season, it's like this isn't his team from October on. He has to come in now. Do you think Nick is different than some of these other quarterbacks in the past because of, like, he's not a new guy in this system? Obviously, he knows the Eagles, Philadelphia, Doug, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the situation the other 14 guys were. I mean, I'd imagine a lot of let's not forget, I know that, Foles is a bit of a different circumstance, I guess, just because he has so much familiarity with Doug. He has so much familiarity with the Eagles. But he was not on this roster last year. I mean, so, there is that. So I'd be interested to know if those, you said it was 2-12 of guys.
2-12. And you know who the quarterback that won both of those games? It was one guy.
Who?
It was Frank Reich.
Oh, there you go. So, but I mean,
greatest comeback in NFL history.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd be interested
Bills
to know what the situation were of those other 14 guys, because I'd imagine Nick Foles' situation isn't that much different in terms of having, being with the team all year and all that stuff. But again, and I'd imagine why this is such a bad record. It's the points I brought up, which is he has not taken a lot of snaps with the first team offense, and he's going to get that chance over the next 3 weeks. I mean, potentially, I guess maybe just the next 2, depending on what you do in Dallas or against Dallas. I don't know if you play Foles just to get more reps. I would say no, just probably because you don't want to risk, God forbid, having Nate Sudfeld starting your first playoff game. But no, I mean, this, to that 2-12 points exactly to what I was trying to say, which is, Eagles fans can justify this all they want. They can sugarcoat it all they want. They can point to Foles' strengths, but Foles has a lot of weaknesses too. There's a reason he wasn't a starting quarterback in the NFL this year or last year. And really, and I'm the biggest Chip guy in the world, but I mean, if we're all going to say Chip's done and Chip's never going to succeed in the NFL, then why are we saying that Foles, who had success with Chip, all of a sudden could? I mean, ever since Foles wasn't playing with Chip, he's been terrible. I mean, his record with Chip was really good. Then Foles went to St. Louis and he was really bad. So, I mean, it's not good. Nick Foles is not a good quarterback, and you don't want to go into the NFL playoffs with a bad quarterback. I know it sounds simple, but that's just that's just reality.
It is. We got a tweet here, Matt. Hashtag the No-Huddle Show from Comic Sans is okay on Twitter. The Eagles still have a powerful defense, 3 solid running backs, and a perfectly competent quarterback in Foles. It's not time to panic. Matt, on the running game aspect, I've heard that a lot the last couple of days, that the Eagles, although they're very balanced, and Doug does like to run the ball, as we've seen a lot this year, they have to become maybe imbalanced towards the run if they're going to actually figure out a way to make a run here. What do you think about that? Not just protecting Foles with the running game, but maybe becoming more of a running team. Can they pull that off? Do you think that's the way to go?
Yeah, I talked about this at the Coliseum with Eliot on the postgame pod on Sunday night. I think you saw a template for what the offense has to become in the team that you beat on Sunday with Todd Gurley, because they used the run to set up the pass. They passed to Gurley out of the backfield. And now none of the Eagles running backs have that kind of skill set, but I think Corey Clement has exceeded expectations in terms of what he's been able to do as a pass catcher. I think you need to use him in that role down the stretch. You need to rotate your running backs in to keep them fresh and therefore, pound it against some tired defenses late in the game. But we've seen this team run the ball effectively. I remember writing after the Cowboy game that no team in the NFL had a more talented stable of running backs than the Eagles running backs have become, with Ajayi kind of coming into his own. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry on Sunday, even though you can make an argument that he should have gotten the ball more than he did on his 15 or 16 carries. So I think you need to feature Ajayi as your number one back. You need to throw the ball to Corey Clement out of the backfield. And I think you're right. You need to skew this offense now towards one that's ground and pound, to one that sets up the pass by running the ball effectively. And that might also have been a natural progression heading into the postseason when the weather starts to get cold, it starts to get windy, it gets more difficult to throw the ball. And again, I don't mean to harp on this. It's going to come down to whether or not Stefan Wisniewski can get healthy and be on the field, because what we saw on Sunday when Vaitai had a rotating cast of characters with Chance Warmack and Isaac Seumalo playing next to him, that left side of the line was a sieve. And that's going to be a problem against pass rushers. That's going to be a problem running the football. But I think big picture, you're absolutely right. They need to become a ground and pound team. I think they have the personnel in the backfield to do it. I don't know if the offensive line is going to be able to facilitate it.
Well, can I ask both you guys, what type of impact, because I've already said what I think, what type of impact do you think losing Wentz is going to have on the run game?
I think it'll have an impact. I mean, I think they could still run the ball effectively. It's just I keep going back to this, like the drives, like the whole thing. I can't envision without Wentz because they have so many of these 3rd and 6s this year that Wentz just makes a play on. I feel like they're off the field now with Foles, and I just don't know. Like I have this fear that they're going to get into this thing where they keep getting 3rd and out, 3 and outs, and then you're going to look up in the 3rd quarter and they don't have much possession, right? They don't have the ball much, many plays, and someone's going to scream, "Doug's only run the ball 9 times," and you're going to look up and, well, they've only run 20 plays. Like I just feel like the whole thing changes. I think they can run it effectively, but they need to throw on 3rd down to move the sticks. That's what I come back to.
My biggest worry about the running game is you saw a lot of success with Carson Wentz sticking the ball in the belly of Blunt or Ajayi, and at the very last second, either tucking it and running, or on Ajayi's first snap as an Eagle, pulling it back and hitting Alshon Jeffrey down the field because you suck the teams in with those play fakes. I don't think that happens. I don't think you're going to be able to rely on the run-pass ratio or the run-pass option, rather. But I think what you're going to see is you're going to have to see more play action. You're going to have to really sell that you're committed to running the football early in a game so that come late in the 3rd quarter or early in the 4th quarter, you can have a play fake that maybe Zach Ertz breaks open or Torrey Smith gets by his man and you have a big play opportunity downfield. You're not going to have the run-pass option. You're not if there's pressure on 2nd and 8 in the pocket, Foles isn't escaping that. But if you can sell the run early, late in the game you can set up the pass, that's where I think it'll help. That's where I think it changes. But you're not going to be able to have the designed quarterback runs. You're not going to have run-pass options. But I don't know how much that changes because the Eagles have shown with Ertz and with Jeffrey and even with Nelson Agholor the last couple of weeks that you have to respect the passing game. And I don't think that's just because of Carson Wentz. I think that's because the receivers and the tight end have played really well.
All right, let's talk a little about Carson now, Eliot. I mean, we talked a lot about the Eagles, and I'm sure we're going to keep doing this next few weeks as we move towards the playoffs and what they're going to be in there and who they play. But Carson Wentz is gone. I mean, this is the Eagles franchise, and they can patch this together for the next 6 weeks and talk about team. But I mean, they need Carson Wentz back and healthy, and so surgery's coming here. Obviously, we know it's a torn ACL and no ligament damage from the reports and what Doug told you guys yesterday. So that's good news, but the long-term outlook for Carson Wentz here, the part that I keep thinking about is this has a good chance to affect 2018 as well. I don't know if it's going to ruin his season or the Eagles season, but I don't know. I mean, I think back to Sam Bradford, who obviously is a different story, but he was never right. It always took him like a year and a half, 2 years to feel himself. And with his luck, he got hurt again by the time that timeline ended. But it's not like he came back and was himself right away. The same thing, Joe Flacco. I feel like it's taken him a year and a half.
Tannehill, it's taken a year, maybe 2.
Right. Just because you're on the field in July or August doesn't mean he's going to be back. What are your thoughts now just on this timeline for Carson?
So I have 2 main thoughts. The first would be that since after the game on Sunday, I talked to 2 doctors that are ACL specialists, and they both were very confident that Wentz would come back and be the player. That Wentz would make a full recovery, and that come August, July next year, he'd be pretty much ready to play. Obviously, they haven't looked at Wentz's specific injury, and this is just general ACL knowledge. This isn't anything specific with Wentz, but I mean they both didn't have any overarching concerns about the fact that he tore his ACL. But I'll say this, and going into Sunday's game, the Eagles had a bona fide top 5 quarterback in the NFL that they could, just every Sunday know they had a top 5 quarterback. They had a guy that was going to make all types of plays, carry this offense. Now you don't, because you don't know what Wentz is going to be after this ACL injury. Like, look, I think Wentz, and I think sometimes it sounds cliche when people say this, like, whoa, he's the type of guy that's going to put in the work. Like, no, Wentz is legitimately the type of guy that you can say is going to attack this rehab head on. And if there's any guy that's going to make a full recovery from the ACL and be the same exact player, Carson has the ability to do it. But you don't know. And that to me is the biggest thing. Like, we can all say we think he's going to do it, and Eagles fans can say, well, it's just an ACL injury, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I agree with all that. I agree he's probably going to be okay. But now you don't know. And to me, just from someone that's in that NovaCare every day, that has to be absolutely terrifying to the Eagles, because so much of this franchise is just completely built on Wentz. I mean, we've talked about it every week that if you look at everybody on this team besides Wentz, like Howie's never won a playoff game. Doug, I think, is a good head coach, but, without Wentz, we'll see. Wentz really makes everything in this franchise go. And I'm not trying to sound dramatic. That's just the reality of the situation. And now the most important cog in this team, the most important guy, is a question mark. And I think we all agree that he'll end on a fine note. But now he is a question mark, and that is really bad.
It is, and we don't know when he's going to come back, the uncertainty, how he's going to be, and the player he's going to be. Matt, I keep thinking about that. We've seen quarterbacks that are mobile and they get hurt, and then maybe there's a fear to be mobile anymore. Or like part of what makes Carson Wentz great isn't because he runs, it's just because he can move around back there and create and find a way to just move a little bit and then make a throw down the field or do something. And that part of his game, I assume it'll be back, but I can't be sure.
And his ability to stand there and take hits. I mean,
Right.
who knows how mentally he prepares for
Yeah,
that.
the
I'm not
mental
saying he'll be scared, but I mean,
that's
we're
my
all
biggest
human,
worry.
like-
Yeah, that's my biggest worry. Think back to what I think was his highlight play of the year, and that was that play against the Redskins, 3rd and 7 in the pocket. It's collapsing around him. 4 or 5 Redskins are there. You think he's sacked, and not only does he escape, he steps up and he hits Corey Clement for like a 27-yard touchdown on a miraculous throw. Those plays aren't going to happen again. I don't know that you're going to be able to come back from a torn ACL and have that kind of Harry Houdini-like escapability from the pocket. And that's what makes Wentz special. I think that he's a very cerebral quarterback. I think that we saw before the injury on Sunday maybe his best pocket presence of the year. I don't know that his footwork had ever been better. I don't know that his feel for the pocket and the pressure around him had ever been better than it was on Sunday, which is pretty miraculous considering the beating that he took and how he just seemed so overwhelmed by the moment in Seattle. I thought he had maybe his best first half performance of his career on Sunday in Los Angeles, and then he gets hurt. So how you come back from that and when you come back from that is going to be critical. And I don't know that you can just bank on Carson Wentz being ready week 1 next year, because if the timeline is 9 months, that means August is when you're getting back on the field. Are you getting back fully 100%? Is this a slow build like Sam Bradford's ACL was, where you're not doing 11 on 11 until a week before the first preseason game? What kind of reps are you getting in the preseason, in practice? How are you going to come back from the injury? How does the knee hold up from a strength standpoint? There are so many variables now. And listen, this happens to a lot of quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks suffer ACL injuries. It's how they recover from it. And I'll be really interested to see what kind of quarterback Carson Wentz is after this injury, because so much of what makes him special is his escapability, his ability to improvise after everything goes wrong, and to make those highlight reel level scrambles. And I don't know that that's going to come back with the snap of a finger, if at all.
I don't either. Let's grab a tweet here about Wentz, and I think this leads into a discussion that I've heard a little bit about this last couple days, and I just think it's absurd. But at Mark Murd on Twitter, how many times have we winced watching Wentz? Sure, it can be magic, but should Carson's coaches have been trying to coach caution? Wentz is 24, and did he need an adult to rein him in for his own good? Hashtag the no-huddle show. This, Eliot, kind of bleeds into, I heard some people saw it on Twitter a little bit. I haven't really heard it, but I've seen it more. Blaming Doug Peterson or questioning why not run by the goal line. I think the idea of blaming a coach when a player gets hurt like this is absurd. Like, it could happen on any play at any moment. First, what do you think about that? And two, do you think when he does come back, they're going to try to rein him in, or is this the player they have?
Well, one of the doctors I talked to, and I think this feeds into this point this question is, said that 1, you have about a 15 to 20% chance of re-tearing the ACL, or re-tearing an ACL. 2, you actually have a better chance of hurting your other ACL than you do the one you injured, just because of the fact that you favor it.
You're compensating, yeah.
Right. So to that, I would say, 1, no, you don't blame Doug. Like, that's just silly. So Doug bears no blame at all for this, in my opinion. 2, I do think there's something to be said for the fact that, like, it's one thing to fight for extra yards at the end, like lower your shoulder type stuff. It's another thing to just send your body flying through the air across the goal line. And, I think that's what you want a quarterback to be. I think that's kind of like the attitude you want from your player and your leader. So I can't knock Wentz for that. And I'm not saying he should when he comes back, he should change his game. But the reality is, this is what's going to happen. So I just honestly see both sides, because I kept thinking to myself these last few days, would you ever see Tom Brady do that? dive across the goal line the way Wentz. I mean, Wentz took off from
here we are back to Carolina. Here we are
no,
back
but that's what
to
I'm saying. The
diving for that
thing,
extra yard.
right.
And, don't pussyfoot. Don't pull up. Go for that extra. Be aggressive.
Go ahead.
How did it work out? I'm just saying this has been an issue for Carson Wentz almost all year, right? And coaches have talked about it. And it finally came home to roost.
Let me finish my point really quick. There's a difference to me between lowering your shoulder to barrel into a guy, and then there's a difference between jumping and launching your body into the air and basically not being able to protect
right. You could separate your throwing shoulder, or you could tear your ACL. That's the difference.
Right.
And either one is a really negative thing for a quarterback to do. And I tend to, fall on the be a little more cautious side of the ledger. And I think that Wentz, for a big chunk of the year after Carolina, had kind of gone down that road as well. And then once the game started to slow down for him a little bit, once he started to pick up confidence, we saw him start to run again. Look at the Seattle game where it was stripped at the goal line. Look at the play on Sunday where he tears the ACL. That aggressiveness came back. Let's make one thing perfectly crystal clear here. I'm not blaming Doug Peterson for the injury. I think it's absurd and absolutely out of left field conspiracy theory garbage to blame a head coach or a coaching staff for a quarterback getting injured. But I do think that Carson Wentz could have done himself a favor by heeding some of those concerns from the staff that have been expressed to him about protecting yourself and getting down and toning back the aggressiveness when you're on the run. Because, guys, let's be honest about this. Wentz had become a target, as he should, as a quarterback when he's that mobile and that big of a playmaker. Teams were going to hit him, as Seattle did, as the Rams did. And I think that he needed to be more cognizant of that before he went off on the run. And maybe you don't have that same level of aggressiveness as we saw in Carolina, as we saw on Sunday night. So I don't blame Doug Peterson, but I do think that in order for Carson Wentz to have any sort of long-term preservation of his career, he's going to have to play differently when he comes back.
I do too. I think that there's going to have to be a line between Carson and instincts and then just like living to die another day and then deciding when it's worth it. Like that play, and that was a big game, obviously. They were trying to clinch the division title, but you just wonder if – I don't know how you teach a quarterback to do it, though. Michael Vick never learned how to do it. I mean, some guys can.
It might take the injury.
I don't think he is going to learn, and I don't think he should change how he plays. I think – I've been thinking about this a lot the last few days, and – I think you just kind of cross your fingers and just hope he doesn't get hurt, but you can't change and take away what makes him a special player. And look, I think Wentz can win from the pocket. I don't think he's a scrambling quarterback, but what makes him who he is his competitive nature, is his, he's driven by it. That's what makes him get up at 5:30 in the morning and go to the facility. And so I just can't sit here and say that on the road in a playoff type game that you need to win to clinch a division, I want Wentz as he's running towards the goal line thinking, I shouldn't do this to protect myself. I agree it sucks. It does suck that he is more susceptible to getting hurt that way. I agree that it sucks that Tom Brady is a guy that – Tom Brady
he could become Ben Roethlisberger.
And I will say Tom Brady also tore an ACL for what it's worth.
Right.
He got hit in the pocket. So you can do it at any point.
Correct.
But I A, don't think Wentz should change how he plays, and B, I don't think he will. And there is some downsides to that, but as we saw this season, there are plenty of upsides to it as well.
I think he's going to have to become Ben Roethlisberger, a guy that can beat you with the pocket and scramble for a big play when necessary. But that doesn't become the highlight of his skill set. You're not doing that 6-7 times a game. And I think that that's the way that Wentz is going to have to preserve his career. And I think he can succeed that way, because by playing the way that he's playing and the way that Eliot, you want to, cross your fingers and pray, I think that you then need to be comfortable with going through this on a yearly basis. You need to be comfortable with the idea that come playoff time, he's not going to be there.
But where I disagree, and I think Joe's saying this to a certain extent, but I know, Matt, this is what you're saying. I disagree that Wentz isn't like Wentz can win from the pocket. Wentz is not a running quarterback, but I'll look it up and while I'm talking, but he doesn't really run the ball a ton. A lot of his runs were simply just because of pressure and stuff, and you can never change that. I mean, unless you're just going to tell Wentz that when the pressure's there, just go down. I mean,
throw it away.
Yeah, but like Brady tore his ACL. I mean, like players have been hurt. Like how many there's a reason it's so impressive that Eli Manning, I know he got benched last week, but has not been hurt, because this happened. I mean, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt. This will be the second time in probably 5 years or 3 years. Where
Well, injuries are undoubtedly part of the game, but it's mitigating and minimizing the risk. And I think that when you run around like Carson Wentz does, you become a target, just like Russell Wilson is a target. And when you're taking those, it's not just the hits that you take from the pocket, like if you're Brady or like you're Flacco or like you're Rodgers. It's the hits that you're taking from the pocket, and then additionally lowering your shoulder and diving for extra yards. It's those extra hits that I think that you need to be more cognizant of if you want to preserve yourself to be healthy.
Where I disagree with you, though, is I just think it's a lot easier said than done. Like, I get your point. Like, yes, in an ideal world, Wentz would be able to analyze every single situation in a millisecond and figure out, okay, this one's worth sliding for, this one's worth going for, this one's not. This, you know what I mean? And I do think he had started to run out of bounds a little more. But again, I'll ask both of you guys, in the situation he faced that he got hurt at, what would you want him to do differently? I mean, do you want him to just say, I'm not going to run because I don't want to get hurt? Do you want him to say that I'm going to slide at the 2-yard line? I mean, you know, like what do you want him to do there in the heat of the moment? So I agree with you. Yes, I would prefer a quarterback that never got hit. I would prefer a quarterback that knew what to do every single situation. But it was the same thing with Michael Vick. It's how the guy is wired. And if this isn't who you want to be your guy, then, you know, maybe you need to think about moving on. But when Wentz comes back, he's going to be the same player. And if he's not, this is exactly what we talked about earlier, where you don't know what type of quarterback he's going to be, because we don't know what type of quarterback Wentz will be if he's thinking about these things when he plays.
Right.
I guess my thing on it is how many hits can he take? Like that. I don't know how you do it. You can't tell him not to be himself. And obviously some he can't help. Like if Vaitai or Jason Peters or whoever the left tackle is in 5 years gets beat, he's just going to get hit. We know that. But I don't know what the number is. Is it 10 a game? Is it 12? I just feel like if you're going to get hit 160 times a year, if it's 10 per game, whether it's 5 that's your fault, 5 that's the offensive line's fault, eventually you're going down. And I feel like
it's like that with all quarterbacks, I guess.
It is. No, it is. But like Eli, Peyton, even though both those guys, Peyton got hurt with his neck, Eli, Peyton, Brett Favre, Brady for the most part, they don't get hit often, and when the pressure coming, they just kind of get down. And it, you know, I love the way Wentz plays. I like that style better, Matt. To get your thoughts on this, but I just feel like it adds up.
Yeah, and again, I agree with Eliot that what makes Carson Wentz special is the escapability and you know, winning on the run and making big plays outside the pocket. But the risk that you take is with a quarterback like that, you need your quarterback. And again, I'm nowhere near as big a Chip Kelly fan in the NFL as Eliot is, but Chip Kelly always said your best ability is your availability. And if your quarterback is putting himself at risk for unnecessary hits, you have to be comfortable with the notion that you could be going into the postseason with Nick Foles or Nate Sudfeld or Tom Savage or Matt McGloin or whoever your backup quarterback winds up being. And that's where I'm kind of with you, Joe. You tell your guy, slide, right? Give yourself up. If you're facing pressure in the pocket, throw it out of bounds. Don't take the unnecessary hits. Those last 2 weeks, and I don't think that this is a cumulative effect injury. I think this was just a freak hit at the wrong angle of his knee at the wrong time as he was diving to the end zone. But the impact of those hits takes a toll on guys. And it's the more time that you spend running outside the pocket, the more time defensive coordinators are spending in meeting rooms saying, when this guy's in the pocket, do like the Seahawks did. Hit him late. When this guy's on the pocket, hit him hard. Make this guy rethink tucking the ball and running. And when you do that, you wind up getting hurt. So I don't know what the methodology is. I don't know how you change it. I don't know if you tell him to run out of bounds versus lowering the shoulder for a first down, whether it's throwing the ball away. But I think you almost need to rewire him so that his strength from the pocket and the strength with his footwork is how you win. It's not because of the escapability. It's because he can be surgical from the pocket, which I think he can be. I think he can be Ben Roethlisberger. I don't think that he has to be Russell Wilson.
Well, a few things. One, I think he is already much, much closer to Ben Roethlisberger than Russell Wilson. I mean, watching Russell Wilson play in person in that Seahawks game a few weeks ago, he literally just runs around behind the line of scrimmage until he makes something happen. Wentz is already surgical from the pocket, so he can win that way. But I think what's important to realize is, you know, he didn't get hurt on a meaningless snap where he could have just gone down. He didn't get hurt fighting for extra yards on a 3rd and 7 in the first quarter of a blowout game. I mean, he got hurt running into the end zone in a must-win game in the NFC and for, to clinch an NFC East division. And again, that's why I think it's important to point that out, because you want him to do that. In this instance, he did the right thing. He did what he was supposed to do. If he had gotten hurt fighting for an extra yard, as I meant, in another situation, then I think you can say, all right, he's got to learn to be better at this. But he did not get hurt this year doing other stuff. He got hurt fighting for those extra yards to go in for a touchdown. And yeah, you don't want him to throw his body up like that, I guess, ideally. But if he's got to score, I mean, if he doesn't get hurt on this play, nobody's talking about it.
Well, you're right. No, it would just be another, wow, Carson Wentz is the MVP. And I mean, just the conversation, it would be on 1,000,000% different. We'd be talking about how this team really looks like the best in the NFL on their way to a Super Bowl. That's not the case, though they still have a chance to do some special things. So we'll be back next week to continue talking about what the Eagles are without Carson and where they're going this year. A game against the Giants on Sunday, and obviously a lot still in front of them, despite the fact that the guy that's probably the MVP of the league is not going to be there. Eliot, on a lighter note, are we doing well with the reviews here? How are we doing?
Not going to lie, I'm a little disappointed in this past week. So we're still at 319, which is what we were, or at least we were at 319 when I checked this morning. I'll say this, guys. I know it's really bad and everything in the season. Don't give up on reviewing the podcast just because Wentz is gone. Keep invested. So, no, I mean, I still think we can get 500 by the playoffs, but I was a little disappointed the last few days, not going to lie.
All right, we'll get some more. And, yeah, I mean, the faith in the podcast should not go. All of our ACLs are intact. Matt, always appreciate you doing this. We'll catch up next week.
Talk to you then. Hey, it's going to be fun to get a glimpse of this offense without Wentz. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
It's going to be different. No, it's a big test for Doug, and we'll see how this team does now. We'll be back next week. Leave us a review. Subscribe on iTunes, as Eliot just said. We'll be back next week on NJ.com right here on the No Huddle Show.